Welcome to the channel. In my last video, I talked about Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge, and since that was shot in the Sherman Oaks Galleria in Los Angeles, I figured I should probably talk about another horror movie that was also shot there a few years prior, with 1986's Chopping Mall.
Where shopping costs you an arm and a leg.
It was directed by Jim Wynorski, and he co-wrote the film along with Steve Mitchell, and the movie was produced by Roger Corman. It's about a group of 20-something-year-olds who plan to stay overnight at a mall that's now patrolled by newly placed security robots that after a lightning strike have now turned into killer robots, and actually, the original name for the movie was Killbots, but they went with a catchier name. I still like the name Killbots, and it makes way more sense than Chopping Mall because, spoiler alert, no one actually gets chopped in this movie. It stars Kelly Maroney, who was cast after the director saw her in another one of my favorite 80s movies, Night of the Comet, which also had a scene shot inside the Sherman Oaks Galleria. Barbara Crampton is also in this movie. She's one of my favorite actresses and has been in a couple of my favorite horror movies with Reanimator and From Beyond. The movie features a lot of horror alumni with Russell Todd from Friday the 13th Part 2, Garrett Graham from Terror Vision and Child's Play 2.
How's it hanging, Phil?
Mary Warrenoff has a small role, and she was also in Night of the Comet and Terror Vision. And playing her husband, or business partner I think, is Paul Bartel, who was in the 80s slasher film Killer Party. Plus the movie has cameos from Dick Miller, who was in a ton of Roger Corman movies, and I think had a role in pretty much every one of Joe Dante's films up until his passing. His most notable role I would say was Gremlins as Murray Futterman. There's another cameo I didn't pick up on until my most recent viewing, which was Angus Scrimm. He's most well known for playing the tall man in the Phantasm movies. Oh, and one more horror alumni I want to mention is the kid stealing records during the mall montage in the beginning is actually Joey from Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. The movie starts off with an infomercial for the robots that then leads into a presentation for the Protector 101 security robots in front of mall employees or investors, I think. They're told that the robots are only programmed to detain, but they aren't told that a swift lightning strike will alter their programming to kill. The Killbots were created by Robert Short, and the inspiration for their look was from the robot in a 1950s sci-fi movie called Gog. Robert built 3 for the movie, and they always worked and actually never malfunctioned on set. And the voice for the Killbots was director Jim Wynorski.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
So after the Killbot presentation, we get a pretty sweet mall montage. We see a kid skateboarding, some beauty pageant chicks, a couple grossly making out, a booming food court, and a stand-up arcade. We then get introduced to 2 of our main characters working in a restaurant, and inside, the walls are lined with posters from Roger Corman movies. For some reason, the chef is just covered in grime from the food that he makes. One of the funnier lines from the movie is also in that scene.
Waitress, more butter.
The lightning then strikes, turning the robots evil, and we get our first kill of the movie with one of the robots ripping the throat of one of the robot techs. We're then introduced to the rest of our group of 20-something-year-olds, and the dude who's perpetually chewing gum obnoxiously is played by John Terlesky, who's since gone on to be a director, working on a lot of network television shows. And it was actually his idea to be constantly chewing gum to make the character even more of a dick. Greg, Mike, and Ferdy work in a furniture store, and they're plotting out their overnight stay inside the mall. Meanwhile, the recently married couple of Rick and Linda are making their way to the mall, and Linda shows off her car mechanic skills, and we see that they just started their own car mechanic business. With our cast established, we see them partying and having a good time, and Ferdy meets his blind date in Allison. Everyone starts hooking up except for Ferdy and Allison, who watch some monster movie on TV. Meanwhile, the Killbots are set loose on the mall, and one kills Dick Miller by electrocuting him as he's mopping up someone's mess. Susie Slater's character Leslie needs a post-coital cigarette and has Mike go buy her a pack from a vending machine. He's confronted by a Killbot and makes a reference to Evil Dead.
Watu, Barada, Niktu, okay?
That doesn't work, and we get another throat rip. Leslie then goes looking for Mike, she uncovers his body, and then is chased by a Killbot. These robots fire lasers, and sometimes they're non-lethal, but other times they are. And in this scene, we get one of cinema's finest head explosions. Our cast witness this and become targeted by the Killbots. They storm the furniture store and completely obliterate it, but the characters manage to escape. The group then splits up, with the chicks escaping into the air ducts, and the guys make their way to a sporting goods store called Peckinpah's, which is a nod to director Sam Peckinpah. Co-writer Steve Mitchell didn't want to make another horror movie where the characters were defenseless, so they had the characters defend themselves and be proactive and actually take the fight to these killer robots. After the dudes arm themselves and come up with a plan of attack, We get a pretty awesome theme that's a nod to spaghetti westerns of the past. Outside of Susie Slater's head explosion, one of the best parts of this movie is the score by Chuck Serino. The music is very memorable and gets stuck in my head after every time I watch this movie, and I'm gonna need to pick up the vinyl someday. This was also Chuck's first time scoring a movie, and he continues to score Jim Wynorski's films to this day. So the dudes unload on the Killbot, and these robots are immune to bullets, and even a propane explosion isn't enough to take it out. The chicks meanwhile craft some Molotov cocktails, and Allison picks up a road flare to foreshadow the ending of the movie. The girls then come under attack, and Barbara Crampton in the special features on the Blu-ray mentions one shot in this sequence makes her cringe every time, and it's actually a pretty funny reaction. Her character dies next when a Killbot lasers her Molotov cocktail, setting her on fire. Our group then reunites to finally terminate one of the Killbots by trapping it in an elevator and blowing up another propane tank, sending it crashing down, and it explodes. Allison proves to be a good shot and gives a simple explanation.
Dad's a Marine.
That line was improvised by Kelly Maroney, and the actors were encouraged to improvise and not just be beholden to what was written on the page. Greg is next to go by getting thrown off the top floor, sending him crashing down to the bottom. It's a pretty cool looking stunt, and the Killbot says its trademark catchphrase after.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Linda and Rick are next to go, with Linda taking a laser beam to the stomach. Rick then sacrifices himself by ramming into the Killbot as it's short-circuiting, taking out the second Killbot. Also, you can very clearly see a mannequin in Rick's place as the robot explodes. Ferdy and Allison, being the only ones left, set out to destroy the Killbot's computer mainframe. In the process, Ferdy takes out the laser function of the Killbot, but the Killbot knocks him out, leaving Allison to finish it off by herself. She hides out in a pet store, and the Killbot ends up knocking over a bunch of cases that were housing tarantulas and snakes. Kelly Maroney was told by the director that he wouldn't have her do anything he wouldn't do onto himself, so he had the animal wrangler place snakes and tarantulas on him, but he said no to the scorpions, so Kelly was cool with having snakes and tarantulas placed on her. Me, on the other hand, would not be okay with having snakes and spiders crawl around on top of me. She escapes and then hides from the Killbot by dangling off a balcony, only to fall off, but luckily there's a tent she can safely land on to break her fall. With the Killbot still in pursuit, she limps over to a paint store. She then dumps paint and paint thinners on the floor that causes the Killbot to lose traction, and Kelly Maroney actually slipped for real on the glass on her way out of the store. She then finally uses that road flare to blow up the final Killbot. After that, we see Fergie is alive, and they limp their way out of the mall. There is a post-credit scene with a Killbot roaming around, possibly leaving the movie open for a sequel that we sadly never got.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
The movie had a limited theatrical release, but has since gone on to be a cult favorite among horror fans. In 2016, Lionsgate Films created the Vestron Video Collector Series, a line dedicated to putting out cult films on Blu-ray with new special features. I've done a video on my collection of that series, so I'll leave a link to it in the description of the video. The first movie to be released in this line was Chopping Mall. All of the movies have a number on the spine, so this movie is essential to this collector series. They did a bunch of new special features for this release, with interviews with a lot of the main cast who fondly remember the making of the movie and are pretty stoked that this movie continues to live on and garner such a big fan base. Both Jim Wynorski and Steve Mitchell are interviewed, and they talk about the inception of the film, the process they went through to get the film made, and the movie's cult status. Also interviewed is Robert Short, who talks about how he created the Killbots and all the little details you may not pick up on when watching the movie. Chuck Serino gets his own interview, and he talks about how he was hired to create the score, how he came up with the themes, and how stoked he was that his score got a vinyl release. This release is still widely available. Not sure if Lionsgate would upgrade this to 4K or put it out again in maybe a steelbook like those Walmart exclusives that they were putting out last year. Either way, I highly recommend anyone to pick up this movie if you love fun 80s horror films. Thanks for watching this video on Chopping Mall. Let me know what your thoughts are on this classic in the comments section below. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a movie time.